Welcome to the Unusual History of Everything, the podcast that uncovers the unusual history of everything around us. I'm Karen Lacey.
And I'm Melanie Dellis. On this episode, we thank Thanksgiving and an overabundance of turkeys back in 1953 for giving us the TV dinner.
Who doesn't love to come home from a long day of work, heat up some yummy food or semi-decent food, turn on the TV, and plop down on the couch to eat? I know I do.
Me too.
Although many people still do enjoy a sit-down meal with a family, back in the 1950s, when having a TV in the home was a new concept, many people found themselves wanting to eat in front of it. Everyone now had the chance to watch programs instead of listening to them, and it was an exciting novelty to be able to eat dinner while doing so.
Frozen foods weren't a new thing at this time, as Clarence Birdseye had invented a machine in 1925 that froze prepackaged food, and Maxon Food Systems out of Long Island packaged up the first frozen dinner and sold it to the airlines in 1945. But selling frozen dinners in supermarkets didn't happen until the C.A. Swanson & Sons did it in 1953. There are a few people who claim they had the idea first, but the one who most people go with as the father of frozen foods is Jerry Thomas, a Swanson salesman who saw an opportunity and ran with it.
Most people in America will go to the grocery store weeks before Thanksgiving to make sure they get the right size frozen turkey that they need. Well, in 1953, whoever was in charge of ordering the turkeys Swanson was going to sell to Americans that Thanksgiving grossly miscalculated and overordered by 260 tons.
That's a lot of miscalculations.
That is
how do
a
you
lot.
do that? That's like my math.
Yeah.
I can see me doing that.
There must have been something going on that year besides this, which is kind of fascinating to kind of dive into. But anyway, Jerry Thomas and the other Swanson employees started staring at the 10 refrigerated train cars that housed all the frozen turkeys and immediately panicked. They couldn't keep the birds frozen until next Thanksgiving, and the trains had to be constantly moving in order to keep the freezer's power on. So the trains were instructed to travel back and forth between Swanson's Nebraska office on the East Coast until they could figure out a solution.
That's when Jerry remembered Maxon Food Systems' frozen airline food trays and got an idea. Why not do the same thing and sell frozen turkey dinners? Since no one else had another plan, they went with it, ordering 5,000 partitioned aluminum trays and having an assembly line of workers cutting up the turkeys and adding cornbread stuffing, gravy, peas, and sweet potatoes topped with butter. They unveiled the TV dinner soon after at 98 cents each. Swanson was worried about sales, but it turns out they didn't have to be. They sold 10 million in the first year.
The idea was a great one, but it took a large amount of people to make it work. One of those people was a woman named Betty Cronin, Swanson's bacteriologist. It wasn't uncommon for food companies to have a bacteriologist on staff, as no one wanted to have an outbreak of salmonella on their hands. It makes sense, right? And it was Betty's job to research how frozen meats and vegetables could be heated together so that the vegetables didn't dry out and the meat cooked through, killing foodborne germs. If she couldn't successfully figure it out, frozen TV dinners wouldn't work. And in the end, Betty did figure it out and went on to help Swanson's figure out how to fix their frozen fried chicken dinners.
But figuring these things out wasn't Betty's only challenge. TV dinners were a new concept to a world where homemakers were trained to cook homemade meals for their families. Now they were being told that they didn't have to make everything from scratch, that they could instead serve their husbands and children pre-packaged frozen foods. This was also a time when more women were entering the workforce than ever before, and it wasn't as easy for them to make fancy time-consuming meals when they got home.
Swanson's TV dinners made it easier for women to make dinners for their families, took out the stressful question of what to make for dinner, and save them time. It was difficult to address the guilt that women felt over cooking this way and not being in the kitchen as often. But with some clever marketing, taking advantage of the new TV craze and adding TV dinner to the box, Betty and Swanson managed to do it and made millions of women feel good about it.
Betty encouraged Swanson to create TV ads that showed elegant, modern women serving their smiling, happy families Swanson TV dinners. And it didn't hurt that in 1962, Barbara Streisand told The New Yorker that the best fried chicken she ever had came from a TV dinner. Betty had a long career at Swanson, and when the company was purchased by Campbell's Soup, they kept Betty on as director of cooking soups and later as director of Campbell's Microwave Institute. Hello, I'm Betty, and I graduated from the Microwave Institute of Technology. That's so weird.
What is the Microwave
I don't know.
Institute?
I believe the Microwave Institute, when I was doing some research, was like Campbell's basically kind of created this department that had researchers trying to make things that they could microwave, like microwave safe bowls and aluminum trays and things like that.
Which makes sense because their first TV dinners were all going into the oven. It would take like 20 minutes.
Exactly.
And then these were like even faster. And
right.
quicker.
When microwaves were invented, they had to like figure out, well, you can't put
like what can you put in
You can't
them?
put aluminum foil in there and you can't put a fork in.
And what kind of foods can be put in there and like do they have to be already cooked or not cooked and how all
Swanson's
that stuff
trays
works?
couldn't go in, so they had to figure out something else. And Betty was a smart cookie.
Yes. Betty was a smart cookie. And there's probably something there for another time talking about microwaves and how that changed food and how we consume it at home once again. And leftovers.
And she did a really good job too. Like part of her job was to figure out how microwaved food could be safe when you're cooking it in the microwave. Because you know how we can cook things in the microwave. It's just not about warming stuff up. So part of her job was figuring out how long and at what temperature it needs to be set in order to kill the bacteria if you're cooking things instead of just warming it up.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that brings us to the end of our episode. You can follow the Unusual History of Everything podcast on Instagram at the Unusual History of Everything and on Facebook at the Unusual History of Everything podcast, and find our show notes on www.musecuratorial.com. The Unusual History of Everything is written, produced, and directed by Melanie Dellis and Karen Lacey.
New episodes air every Tuesday on all podcast outlets. Be sure to subscribe to us so you never miss an episode and leave us a review. You can also see photos from our episodes and more on our website, Instagram, and Facebook. Thanks for listening. I'm Melanie Dellis.
And I'm Karen Lacey, your host for the Unusual History of Everything.